examples. I grew up. There was a family I grew up with. They were very friend. Were very close friends as a family. But I found out they couldn't approach their dad, who was pretty fond of me, to
Hmm.
ask of anything that they felt he won't be happy with, because their dad was very successful in in the country at the time, and literally used the his money to control the decisions for the children. So it was very controlling from the point of, if you don't do this, then you're not going to go on vacation. So the people go on vacation like abroad, but not everybody goes. You go based on, you know, who who's in who's who's favored by daddy per time, per summer.
Mm,
It was
mm,
weird. It was absolutely weird. So sometimes they'll say to me, Sarah, please go and tell daddy this, or go and ask daddy this. I mean, I never got to go on any summer because I wasn't one of the children, but I found it easier to approach him on some things at that time, because for some reason he was using money to control them. He probably didn't even know this was what was happening. At the time, I didn't understand it either. But
mhm,
those children are likely, not compulsorily, but are likely to see money from that point of view, such that when they
yeah.
get into their relationships or their family, they would want to use money to control someone. So it's not money in that sense at that time. They want to exert influence and control. But because the only way they've seen it done is to use money to do it, then they'll try and do the same. They'll try and replicate the same. And those are the issues.
So I mean, it means therefore that, one should really ask himself or herself to say, how was I introduced to money? All right. Before we went on air, I was telling you that I want to talk about intimacy at some point in time. And part of what we found out is that, people relate with intimacy based on how they were introduced to it. You get it? And I think the same thing also holds for money, which is what you're really saying here now. That, if you saw money as a tool to control, chances are, unless there's a change of mindset, you probably want to use money as a tool to control. And I think that's important for folks who are listening in. So really you want to ask yourself, what has been my relationship with money? All right. Sometimes when you grow up with scarcity, you tend to be stingy, even when you now have money. If you grow up in an environment where, there was no control. People don't plan, they just spend. You may be surprised that even till this time of this year, millions have passed through your hands, and yet still you may not be able to say, this is what I've done, with the money. So I think one thing we can take note of at this point is, what has been my relationship with money? How was I introduced to money? So that's something you want to keep in mind as we carry on, this conversation. So I mean, so what kind of money conversations should couples be having before and before marriage and in marriage? What
In
what do you
marriage.
think?
Yeah, well, so that and yeah, those are two different things. And thank you for that. The best time to have these conversations is certainly before marriage. Because once you can comfortably have those discussions before marriage, they are probably likely to be easier in marriage. Before marriage, nobody talked about it. And some of them are also uh, some of the things that we have seen. I'll give you an experience. We believe, for instance, that it's gentlemanly based on our culture if we go out to eat for the man to pay. Now, if the man is dating, and I'm talking about pre-marriage now, someone who's more well off than he is. And when I say more well off, maybe not just what she earns, maybe what her family has access to.
Mm,
He cannot replicate the same kind of meals. They cannot go for the same kind of meals in the same places if he will be paying. So if they want to go out, and that's why those things should have been discussed. Like, where are we going?
mm,
If we're going to, and say, for instance, it's the case where the person goes to Sheraton for lunch, for instance, buffet at Sheraton for lunch, and you feel, well, I think Jevenik is my thing, is my place. If there's no point trying to show that I love her by taking her to Sheraton without having discussed it, because she might be happy to go to Sheraton. no problem. We'll be happy to share in pain as well, without seeing it as a problem. But we culturally don't do that. So me, who
Mhm.
I am Jevonic level, take her to Sheraton, and then I have to fork out the money for my own part of it and for her own meal. Of course, she's happy about it. She's lovely about, but we haven't really spoken about it. What is the, how exactly is this purchase affecting you as against how it's affecting me?
Mm.
And I'll tell you
Mm.
how that happens even in marriage. So in marriage, you'll find out that people then begin to have, I mean, and with myself and my wife, what I found out that was that I was the financial person. I had more financial literacy. I Because of my own scripts growing up and some of the things I passed through, I found out that it was best that we planned ahead and had money kept aside. Um, from my own from my wife's point of view, it's let's ensure that everybody is taken care of in the family. So she had a positive, I had a positive, but they clashed because at some point in time, I needed to say, okay, what are we keeping over? She wasn't too concerned about what we're keeping over. Is how can we ensure that, everybody's fine now? And that's because in her story, there were elements of times where people were not, she had experienced where people were not fully taken care of, even though it existed. But it was as if there was just, and I don't want to go too much into the story, but there were people who had access, there were people who didn't have access, even when it was available. So
Mm.
she feels let's bless everybody with it. I feel see everybody's blessed. Let's keep the let's keep the one for tomorrow. And so we regularly will clash on it. And I have seen people, you know, consistently have that. Somebody came to me at some point and said, how am I going to solve this problem? I give my wife everything. I built her business for her. I put money into this. I did everything, but we just cannot see on money matters. Every time I try to plan for the future, my wife wants to ensure that everything is used in the now. And this sounds a bit funny because it looks as if, based on the examples I've given, the men are the ones that are thinking for the future and the women are the ones that think for now. It's not true. I have other examples of people who comes to meet me who is totally the opposite. And the wife is saying, I'm almost beginning to think about getting investments that my husband doesn't know about because he just wants us to consistently go on holidays with all the money we have.
Let me stop you there, and because this is a real problem. Yeah. So I remember the story of a couple. They are much older now, and the woman said to me that when they were younger, the man, will just want to spend. So she actually went ahead, invested in businesses that he was not aware of until much later. All right. And guess what? It is those investments that she made that is now sustaining the family, sustaining them as a couple in their old age. So my question is it a wise thing to keep away some, if your spouse is as you described, not disciplined, etc., etc., is it okay for you to, put something aside so long as at the end of the day, it will still be for both of you and the family? Is that something you think?
So I will first give you a general
Mhm.
answer and then I'll give you a specific answer.
Okay.
General answer, which is the real answer, is it has to be on a case by case basis. And I'm saying that with all sense of duty and responsibility. Because sometimes what people should take as last resort, they take as first resort just because they've heard it or it's been advised.
Mhm.
If you ask me ordinarily, no. Financial secrets. So, and that's what happens with when we're not able to when we're not able to align. We begin to have financial secrets.
Mhm.
And actually we begin to have financial infidelity.
Mhm.
So people are fine with oh, no, no, sexual infidelity is wrong, but they do not know financial infidelity is just as wrong because it's a betrayal of trust. And people begin to have financial infidelity when they begin to keep financial secrets. And I know this because I had at some point done it, and I found out that it wasn't giving me peace. So I had to talk about it. But then, like I said, it's on a case by case basis. So
Yeah.
depending on what the cases, we'll look at it. Ordinarily, no, I'll
Yeah.
say no. People need to sort it out. See, you might say that investment is keeping them, but until you speak with the person before you understand how that person feels about it. Some people might feel very
Mhm.
well about it. We've seen situations where people feel very resentful about the fact that their spouses did things that they had no idea about, even though it
Mhm.
seemed beneficial in that sense. But they felt, what's my value? We're supposed to be equals in this. So if I have
Mhm.
no idea about it, I've never had an idea about it, that means you didn't consider that I had some equal input in this. And it sometimes makes even more resolved the problems at the end than it should have been. So the first thing is to try and sort it out, which is not very easy sometimes. Yeah.
I agree with you, actually. I mean, like you said, it's a case by case. And so, just in case you're listening to us, I always like to bring things home. All right. So, just in case you are listening to us and you thought you had gotten a carte blanche to continue to hide, maybe you want to think about it again. All right. So, now, what about a situation where either by virtue of personality, upbringing, training, etc., 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 a particular spouse is really not willing to engage in that conversation. How can you get that person to get involved? How can you get the unwilling spouse to want to talk about money?
So this right here is the big problem.
Mm,
It is a big problem. It is something that we're still working out. So the first thing is you need to try. If you consistently find out that it is bringing conflict when you try, um, then we need to look at how you're doing it. Um, my people say that, and this is just me being, it might not mean exactly the same thing, but they say that when you say sorry to someone, it has it has this masculine there's a masculine sorry and there's a feminine sorry. Pretty much. I mean, there's a sorry that seems empathetic. There's one that doesn't that just seems you're saying it for righteousness, for law righteousness. One of the key things with having this conversation is seeking first to understand before you're understood. I don't always
mhm,
pass in this, but it's critical for the person who feels they are more open to the discussion to try and understand why the other person is closed to the discussion.
mhm,
That might help in broaching the discussion in the first place. So that means as well that that discussion has to be broached under particular situations, circumstances, and situations. There are red light situations where they are probably not the places to broach the conversation. The tone of the conversation is, wait, you've gone to spend another money, Abby. I just saw one that come. I just, I just saw one debit alert. You know, what's the problem? Why are you always spending more? Why? And the conversation is dead on arrival. I know
mhm,
someone who said what you just said to, who said, see, I have done everything. I have done candlelight dinner and breakfast for my wife so that we can, you know, I've set the tone every just so that we can have money discussions. But as soon as the discussion gets to money, she turns off. She doesn't want to talk about money. He said, because of peace, I've let it go. Now what I would say is, unfortunately, on our end, we don't do a lot of therapy. If we did, it would have been good to do therapy, to go as a couple for therapy, because there's a reason why. And even though we don't like to say it or to agree to it, we all bring a little part of our upbringing with us. I was telling you before the show, all of us do.
Hmm.
Many of us don't think we do, but we all do. There's something from our past, from our childhood, from things that have happened to us that we have attached ourselves to. And we are comfortable with the familiar. We
Yeah.
Even when we don't know, we're comfortable too. We're most likely to move in it. It's the reason why, currently I live in the UK, and it's amazing. Almost all adults who move to the UK who are Africans eat African food in the UK. It's crazy. It's like we've moved to another environment, but we are still eating the food from from our end. So we go to African shop to buy African food because we have taken that part with us. Even though we're now somewhere else where there's a new servant, no, we just maybe pick a few things. But everybody, if you go to a regular African house, you almost eat as if you were back in Nigeria. And it's the same
Mm.
thing, even with money. So they need to find out, it needs to find out with you. And then if it is impossible to have a discussion, we need to see how we can be flexible. Not many things are black and white. Like I said about joint accounts, I used to think joint account was the thing. My parents had joint accounts all through. All my parents' accounts, they're signatories to each other, but they never stopped fighting about money. So I learned even before I got married, I knew joint account was not the answer. You know, joint accounting perhaps, but joint account doesn't particularly work for everybody. For some other people, it works fine. For some other people, it does not work. However, if there's no joint accounting, then that would be a problem. So that's a flexible way. That's a
Mm.
gray. That's not a black and white.
Okay.
There
Okay.
are others
So,
as well.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you. This is the roundtable with Norwa Edopolo, and today we're talking about money matters in marriage. On the roundtable, we talk about relationship, we talk about leadership, and we've been on relationship for a bit now, and we might stay on it a little bit longer, but let's see how it pans out. Today I have Busayo Akanro, and we're talking about money matters in marriage. I think that every couple require a bit of psychology, either from going to learn or from depending on the Holy Spirit. Because the situation where one party is clamping up, there's something wrong somewhere, there's history, there is an experience. The other day I was in class somewhere, and my facilitator was saying that when she was growing up in primary school, when you don't get the answer in a mathematics question, then you stand in front of the class and everybody sings for you. Olodo rabata, ojo eja lo moje. That woman is accomplished today. She's in her 50s, successful woman, but she says that till tomorrow, if you say to her 50 plus 40, her mind goes back to primary school. All right. And so if you are here again, bringing it home and you find it difficult, something happened somewhere in your past that is still holding you. And I must say that more and more people are beginning to seek counseling and coaching. I mean, I offer coaching and counseling as a service. And, I have people who, when people find me online, people see me in different ways. So, yeah. And if both of you find it difficult to have this conversation, then get a coach, get a counselor. All right. Rather than let the marriage break down or become, horrible, get somebody who can help you to, talk through it, and you'll be good to go. So let's get into a bit of practicals. So what systems or habits have you seen that work well for couples?
Yep. So I just spoke about one, but the key one is trying to know where one is strong and the other is weak, and trying
Mhm.
to develop a system that's transparent to both of them. Uh, I can give you an example. If they feel that the time between which they have the discussions is so, it's so far between each other that it's most likely that when they talk about it, there will be transgression, which will lead to trans conflict. They can have a system where they do it regularly. So, for instance, if you say, you know what, babe, let's every first week of the month, let's have our, let's just do our finances. Let's talk about it through. Um, and so they can sit down and talk about it. The person who likes to do spreadsheet can hold the spreadsheet and do it and then talk everybody through this is where we are, this is where we were. Fine. It doesn't have to be that way either. That can be, it can be from a this is what we want to achieve. So if somebody says this is what we want, excuse me, this because I found out even budgets, people struggle with budgets. So when I teach, when I do my coaching, I do some what you call no budget coaching because I've tried to follow budgets and it doesn't work for me. What works for me is conscious spending, and I'll explain that. The conscious spending pretty much says, let me find out what I need to spend money on, what our needs are. Once we settle the needs, everything that's left there, we can spend it as we like.
Mm.
So, so what are our needs? Rent, we need to pay the rent. So rent goes. What are our tithes and all that offering and all those. And interestingly, I've always automated my finances from Nigeria because I'm extremely
Mm.
forgetful with many things. So it's been I don't remember when I ever raised up envelope for tithes. It's been a long time, even when as soon as internet banking started, I had standing orders. I do not give in church. I've given before I've come to church, after, depending on when the date is, because it goes
Mhm.
out on the day. Yeah. So and it just goes that way. Same for the investor. Money that goes to the investment account goes to the investment account. Money that goes for rent goes to all that's automatically done. Money that goes for saving goes for savings. That's already done. Once that's done, any money that that's inside there that I'm spending guilt free because
Mhm.
I know that I've consciously allocated it as planned. Do you get? So for some people that works. For people like me that works. For some other people that want, first we then do all the Excel sheets and then based on that, then we'll do it. We'll spend it different. We'll spend it, based on that strict budget. That's fine. But you see, the problem comes when the other party doesn't agree with it. So
Mm.
you can track spending together. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be the person can track. You can track one person spending while the other person tracks your spending. You can track both of your spendings together, or one person can be the tracker who's
Mhm.
tracking his own spending and your own spending. It all depends. You can decide, okay, we don't care about the little bits. We care about the big goals. So you say to yourselves, this year we want to buy a car. And so how much is it going to cost? It's going to cost, you know, X amount, let's say 15 million naira. So how do we plan to save towards it? This is how we'll plan to save towards. You save 500K, and I'll save 500K every month. And as far as you're concerned, you're trying to get to 15 million naira on a
Mhm.
500K per person every month. That's all. Everything else
Mhm.
that has to do with anything else, somebody wants to buy gold, wants to buy jewelry, wants to buy it, is not important. You don't care. That's the way to be flexible. Once you've achieved that, and of course, I just said car, which is some people might say it's a liability, but then it depends on what you want. Once you've agreed with
Mhm.
to what is it, that's fine. Buy the people who came together to buy the car enjoy and harmony are the same people who come together enjoy and harmony to buy a house, if you get what I
Mhm.
mean. And same people come
Mhm.
together to buy land. Sometimes we always make it look like, oh, some of those other things are taboos because they are liabilities. Well, they might be liabilities, but they're liabilities that we want to buy and enjoy. So there's no point trying to say, we're saving for a house. We're saying, well, but I saw this car, and I just said, let me use the money so that I want to surprise you. You know, all sorts of problems come after surprise, and the day of the surprise, everybody will come, everybody will be screaming. And then after everybody goes home, then both of them will face each other and people say, what's this? Where did you get it? And there's war. But it's once there's that understanding, there can be flexibility. So it's the flexibility of, okay, this is what we want, this is what you want. Our methods seem to clash. Okay, how can we still achieve those things without necessarily um, holding particular rules to bear? And once we have that, so like I said, some people just have those goals and then they remove them, they click them. So they forget about everything, they just follow the goals. For some people, it's saving. For some people, is for us here, is okay, deposit for mortgage. And once they have those things, That's all they focus on. Everything else, do as you like, and so
Hmm.
it reduces the
So,
conflict.
so I mean, so so what we're saying is that there must be a how do you put it now? There must be a pattern to the madness.
Must be a method to it, yeah.
Yeah, there was a method to the madness. All right. So,
Yes.
in other words, you cannot not have a process. All right. Whether it's budgeting, whether it's expense tracking, whether it's projects, uh, whatever, project financing, etc., etc., etc. The couples must come together and create some system that works for them. I mean, in our own relationship, for example, um, I mean, I don't go into nitty-gritty details, but I just said to my wife, so and so amount of money is coming, and this is how I think we should go. Then she would say, no, we should think this way. Then we agree. Once we agree, I just, I implement. If there's any change along the way, then I can come back and say, hey, we had agreed on this, but, so and so and so came up. And so I'm thinking that we should, turn left or turn right, as the case may be. And, and that's something that evolved with time. All right. It evolved with time. So again, and I'm going to keep doing this as we go along because I always like to bring it home. All right. I believe the people who are listening to us because they want change. They want things to be better. So what we're saying on this one is that husband and wife must create a system that is equitable, a system that is fair. If I must add, a system that is, I mean, you heard him talking about tithes and offerings, a system that honors God, your source. Okay. Now, how about in a situation where listening to us today are a couple that have been wounded already? Maybe my husband has done something, my wife has done something. So, it's not smooth. We are both hurting from financial mishaps. I remember the story of a guy. He came to England to work and he was sending the money home to the wife to, invest in the business. The wife packed all the money and gave to her brother who had this get rich quick idea. So the guy comes back from England after slaving, working in the cold room and all that, thinking that he was going to come back, either to meet a house or to meet money in the bank. And all he met on ground was stories, you know. It took me a bit to mend that relationship by the grace of God. I remember then, because they've jackpot now. So what do you do in that situation? How do you begin to deal with that when there's been betrayal, there's resentment for whatever reason?
Yeah, thank you. And there are quite a number of issues like this I'm dealing with at the moment as well. Uh, Financial issues cut deep, and you better believe me. So some people on here know that. Some people who don't know that, who have not gotten married, will know that when they get into marriage, it's almost as bad as sexual infidelity. It does cut deep. But the first thing is to treat it like any wound. Just um, first become aware and make your partner aware this is what it is. Let's address it together. I've been hurt because I feel, you've been investing without letting me know. You've been putting money aside, or you've done this I have been. I trusted you, and I'm not sure I feel like I can trust you anymore. There's nothing wrong with being open that way. I'm not saying I can't trust you anymore. I'm saying you've withdrawn from my emotional account in such a way where it is reading red now. But yes, you can still build it back. Once they have that, I mean, first things first, in a Christian marriage, grace has to underscore everything. Um, Money is a big issue. In fact, now that I've spoken about it, just reminded me of a few things, which I don't know if we'll have time to delve into, that we suffer
Mm.
from, especially because we're in church as well, because there are things that we place above each other. And there are nuances, it's all there in the scriptures. If we look at it, we'll see it and we'll know. But then let's go back to this. So that's it. So that's from the first point of view. Let's acknowledge that this exists and we're unhappy with it. Then we need to have a way of working towards resolving it. typically to work towards resolving an issue like this, especially when it's financial wounds, I need to know what within that issue has hurt the other person. The person who was hurt needs to know why this person took that decision. I'll give you an like yours, and probably you probably have more information about it. If when I
Mm.
take money and I give to my brother that has been sent to me to invest, I did it out of good intentions. I didn't do it because I wanted to hurt my husband. I did it because I thought it will, it will yield more, and then there will be more for both me and my husband or family, and for my brother that I thought I'd help. So it was out of good intentions. However, it was not well thought through. But that has happened. Once they can walk through those things, and usually, like I said, you open it up like any wound, and then you begin to treat it little by little. It might take some time, it will take some time, and you have a good experience there, and then they can heal. So moving towards healing, the first thing is openness. That's typically the first thing. This is it. And then we begin to ask why. What we rarely ever do is ask why. Why is this happening? Is this a pattern? What could have been? Is there something in my past? Is there something that's happened to me? Did I lose money somewhere? Did I get duped? Did I have lack? There's so many things. And like I said, sometimes it is not money. It is something else. Maybe feels you're not talking to me anymore. You're not close to me anymore. So I need your attention, but I can only get your attention when I do something that upsets you. That's what brings us to talk. If
Mm.
if it's if there's no if I don't spend the money wrongly, you will not say, okay, darling, let's sit down and talk. Even though you might be upset, but at least that's the only thing that makes us talk. Once everything is fine and all, you don't even talk to me. You just, we have no relationship. So there might be something else that it's a symbol of. And once we can unearth it, we can fix that thing, which is the root. Then we can pretty much solve this one on the end and move towards healing.
Mm. Thank you so much. So I think we'll pause here and we'll take some questions, comments, and feedback, from the audience. So guys, those of you on Zoom, you want to type in the chat. People on Facebook and YouTube, please, you can type on the chat, and the guys on Instagram, same thing. So if you have a question to ask, something to clarify, I still have a few more questions for Busayo, but I just thought we should, open up and hear from you. Ideally, we have like 10 minutes to the end. So let's see if we have questions, comments, and observations. So please feel free to ask your questions, make your comments, and I would be glad to take it. If you have a question, a comment, an observation, this is the time to do it. So go ahead and just, type it in. Those of us who are in the Zoom session, you can unmute yourself to ask. I guess that's the privilege of being in the studio with us in the manner of speaking. So if you are with us in the Zoom room, you can unmute and ask your question. If you're on the chat, please send in your send in your questions also.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Go ahead.
My name is Bukumi. Thank you very much for this section. Very, very interesting. So when you were discussing earlier, you mentioned that sometimes funds are coming in, and you told your wife that, oh, I feel the funds is coming in. I think we should do it this way, and your wife say, oh, no, no, let's do it this way. After agreement, sometimes the plan can change. I'm very sure that when the plan changes and you come back to your wife and say, oh, we agreed on this, but eventually we spent the money to do this or this. I'm very sure sometimes she would be angry. How do you manage a reaction at that point?
Good question. Thank you very much. Well, I mean, if it's not a pattern, if I don't constantly shift the goalposts, I think she would understand. More so if my reason for shifting the goalpost is reasonable. All right. That's what I think. If my reason is reasonable, if it's not a pattern, then I want to believe that my wife should give me the benefit of doubt. Or if it's the other way around, my husband should give me the benefit of doubt. It only becomes a problem if it's a habit. I do it often. We agree on something, I do something else, and I come back and say, oh, I'm sorry. We agreed to go left. I went right, and sorry, I didn't call you, So if it's not a pattern, it should be fine. It only becomes a challenge if it's a pattern. I don't know if Pusai wants to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just smiling because I suspect that the person who asked the question is asking because it's probably a pattern. Because because I can relate. I can relate on how many times what is written is different from what happened at the end.
Yeah,
And
so
yeah, so I guess that's what the person is trying to ask.
mm.
I think the
It
first thing,
shouldn't.
go on.
Yeah, go ahead, Messiah, go ahead.
There's something that we rarely do in these circumstances, and it's to pause and try and observe, like ask why, what's
Mhm.
going on, why, just try and remove yourself from the situation and say, okay, why exactly is it that this happens every time we sit down, we plan it, we have a goal, we have a whatever, and this party, and it could be you, even if you're the party who ensures that the execution doesn't go according to the plan. Why do I do that? If you're not, the question to ask is, why does the person do that? Typically, when we ask why, you are asking the person, why are you doing this? No, that's not the question. The question is, ask yourself why that person is doing that. Is there something? Usually, many times, you'll be shocked. There is a symbolism. Something might have happened in the person's past. The person has no idea that they are unconsciously playing as a script. And I've seen this happen many times.
Thank you so much. Any other question, comments, observations? Before we go on, I have a few more questions I'd like us to look at together, but I just wanted to give an opportunity. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Zoom. Bukumi, I hope we answered your question to some extent.
Yes,
All right.
correctly. But what I could get was personal question to yourself, right? Than asking the other party.
First.
That's what I could get from it.
First.
Well, start from yourself. Start from yourself first, and ultimately you must engage the other party, because it takes two to tango, particularly if you are the receiving end. Otherwise, resentment might start building up. So start from yourself first and say, like he has said, is there anything I'm doing that could be causing this? Is it that every time they come back to me, we end up quarreling, so they just end up going on their own? That kind of, it's possible that I can almost tell you're going to say no anyway, because it doesn't matter. So long as it's not what you want, you're going to say no. So I'll just go ahead and do it and damn the consequences. So sometimes that's why people do what they do. Okay, so let's take an example. So this is husband and wife. Any request from my family, my spouse will say no, whether rightly or wrongly. Do you get? Unreasonably so. So sometimes I will just do it and say, well, it's my mom. I have to support my mom. I have to help my dad. I have to help my sister. I have to help my brother. That kind of thing. So I'll do it, knowing fully that when I get home, maybe 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, we put in the freezer. That's okay. It's a small price to pay, because I know that I can't reason with you on this one. So long as it's my members, your answer is no, even without hearing me. So that's why sometimes, start with yourself, but ultimately you should end up, with your spouse. All right. To have that conversation.
Yeah, and let me give you a script that you can use. Becoming it's a, very smilingly, gently say, that I don't know if you've observed, though, babe, but every time we plan this and we put this in place, sometimes it seems as if at the end of the day, we are not able to get to something happens. Why do you think that happens? So it's non-confrontational at them. Why do you think? If the person like that, well, I don't know. I don't say no, don't tell me now. Tell me after you've thought about it later. Just tell me later. Think about it later, and then we can talk about it. So you can set a time, and then at some point later, then you can try and talk about what do you think. So if it comes to the point where the person feels, well, it's because I feel that, or I don't know, I just a hint. So you begin to then you then ask the second question. Is there a reason why you feel that way or why you think that way? It might not get it straight away, but what you're doing is you're trying to little by little chip into to be able to make the person be aware and say, why is it that? Why is it that? Why is it that? And think, and you'll be shocked sometimes at the responses you can get. Yep. But that's a very good way to be able to get to the root of matter to resolve it.
Bravo, bravo. Thank you. So as we begin to wrap up, let's tie this back to God's word. All right. So Busayo, I mean, what does the Bible say about money and marriage? As much of it as you can remember.
Well, there's a lot. The Bible says, Amos 3:3 is key. Can two work together except they agree? And finances are key on it. There's some parts of the Bible that talks about money that I think is very important. And I think we all should think about it very well. Bible says that there are people who have run after riches and in the process pierced themselves through with many sorrows. So sometimes this, desire and accumulation for wealth itself has the possibility of getting people to hurt themselves and their relationships. It is very important to look at. And I'll quickly just add this. I was in a meeting a couple of days ago where somebody said, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. That verse alone has been the cause of conflict in many marriages. Because people have told us, you are not a good man. We have not seen, you have not even kept anything for us. Let's talk about your children's children. And so I felt cringy when I heard it. And, like me, I'd say, see, you have to back that up with another scripture. Scripture must interpret scripture. And you will find it impossible to back it up. And I'm like, so you take it with a pinch of salt. Okay, let's look at the exegesis. Let's see where else it was explained. Everywhere else, and anybody can go and do their study on it. Everywhere, everybody that has explained that study as individuals have ensured that they do not use that as the qualification of a good man. Because that's not that making an inheritance, especially a financial inheritance or asset in the material inheritance for your children's children, is not a definition of what a good man is. That thing is not material. It can be legacy, it can be the word, it can be a lifestyle, it can be, whatever you live, but it's not. The definition of a good man is not the one that lives, ogun, like we call it, his children's children. If we can sort that one alone out, there are things that we'll be able to sort out properly. But the most important thing for me is can two walk together until they agree? Why do I like it? It means that for us to work together, we must compromise to agree. Must see, because what people are doing is they're working together, even though they have not compromised to agree. So let's agree. Agree that, okay, I don't like money, you like money. And so, okay, how do we resolve it? This is how we resolve it. Then we can work together. It's not compulsory that, okay, you must like money. If you don't like money, you must like money, or you must talk, and then we will not work together. So there has to be that flexibility. But I trust that, as we continue to learn, God will give us the grace to be able to understand how to agree so that we can work together.
Thank you so much. There's a question here. It says, thank you, sirs. How will a spouse who is financially incapacitated be part of the financial decision in a home?
That's a very good one. Okay. So this is one of the type that I like to talk about. There has to be discussions. The discussion has to be within both parties first. If you do need help, Asnorua is there. If you need to reach out to me, you can speak with here, you can reach out. We can have a discussion as well. So there has to be a discussion. The first discussion is, why is being financially incapacitated an important reason for making a financial decision in the house? Do you get that? That's the first question. Why is it? Because it's looking like my ability to raise my hand up and say something is based on what I brought to the table. And the question is, why is that? Where is that coming from? Whose script is it? Is it person's script? Is it the the other party's script? Is it something from before? Do they both believe? Why? Because once we can unearth that, then we can, and unpack it. Then we can begin to move forward. Because really, it should not be.
I agree, absolutely. I can give the example of soldiers. Because soldiers move a lot, hardly do you find, of course, that scenario is changing in today's world. But once upon a time, the wife stays with the children in one place, and then the man goes from place to place to place to place to place. So she may not be able to get the kind of job she really wants, etc., etc. Now, to imagine that because she didn't go out to work like the husband did, therefore she doesn't have a right to speak is, it's in fact, it's a wrong understanding of marriage. Yeah, I think that's the way to put it. So the person asking that question, your right to speak in your home is not because of the amount of money that you bring to the table. Because the understanding is that neither of you can earn money if there's no peace at home. All right? Yeah, if your husband is not a husband, you can't make money as a woman. You won't be at peace. Same if it's the other way around. So I don't think you should make money, a basis. And the truth is, sometimes even the one who is making the so-called money is leaning on the wisdom of the other party. All right? It's your wife or your husband that will tell you turn left, turn right, and you go and turn left and turn right, and you win. All right? Yeah. I mean, look at those footballers, for example. They don't have good homes. Even their ability to play on the pitch will be affected. If you're like, I always used to tell them in church those days, I said to them, the reason why you can have me the way you have me is because I know that my children are in good hands, that my wife is taking care of them. If I wasn't sure of that, I won't be able to minister to you effectively, because half of me will be wondering, oh my God, have they eaten? Are they in bed now? So I cannot now come and tell you that, oh, I'm the only one. No. Same also, even for us right now, when I'm like the house husband right now, even though I'm still working. All right. It says, thank you, sir. Can we get an email address, send a message after the session? Yes, I would. So my email address, I'll just put it there, jnorua1@gmail.com. All right, that's my email address, jnorua1@gmail.com. Okay, I think that should go to everybody on the chat. Yes, jnorua1@gmail.com. All right, Busayo, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed today's session, and I'm really delighted that we could swing it both on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, all at once. And I'm glad that we've reconnected after so many years. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, please share this episode with someone. Leave us a review, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on YouTube or on Instagram. Please leave us a review, all right? You've been listening to the Roundtable with Norua Idopolo. This is where we talk about real talk that leads to real change. And we talk about relationship, leadership, etc. And it's been my pleasure hosting this edition as usual. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Whether you're on Facebook, you follow me, YouTube, you like, and subscribe. And of course, on Instagram, you do everything. You like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much. Thank you, Busayo. God bless you.
Thanks
all right, everybody.
Okay,
is that a question? Let's see. Oh, okay. It's a thank you. Great. All right. Thank you, everybody. And those of you who joined us live on Zoom, really, really delighted to have you. God bless you all. Bye. So, Busayo, don't forget, please link up for me for my next. By the way, next month, first Wednesday of next month, we're going to be talking about what the hell has happened to intimacy. All right, that's the topic. What the hell has happened to intimacy? Because it looks as if hell has stepped into intimacy. All right.